All right, cool. So I guess what we'll do is we're going to keep this a bit informal, just so you guys know. I just prefer, we all three of us prefer to just kind of make this a conversation. We have some very specific talking points. And so we're going to walk through them. We each have different perspectives and different professional information from each of us on this. I'm going to add a bit more of the paid social side as well as scaling it. Heather is going to add a lot of data, that is her background, to all of this, and then Rob is going to speak a little bit specifically on the organic side, that is his background, and we're going to kind of hash it all out live for all of you guys. We're going to make sure there's a little bit of time left for Q&A at the end. So we're going to keep this a bit loose. So I'll just kind of introduce myself, and we'll just go down the line so you have some context to who we are. So I'm Brian Cristiano. I'm the CEO of Bold Worldwide. We are a fully integrated ad agency based here in New York. We work with a lot of sports, lifestyle, fitness brands. We have other clients as well. We work on project basis for clients as large as PepsiCo, and then we have a lot of endurance sports clients, startup, sports tech, et cetera, and everything in between. Social media marketing has been one of the fastest growing segments of our business as well as our clients, and we've seen the absolute most successful and positive ROIs for our clients when utilizing social media properly, both on the paid and organic side. Heather.
Hi guys, I'm Heather Meyer. Like Brian said, I work with Navigate Research. If you haven't heard of us, we specialize in the sports and entertainment space, and we measure and value sponsorships and help brands, teams, leagues, and agencies try and more efficiently create sponsorships and make sure they're more effective. So specific to social, obviously, we measure all of the channels that are usually within a sponsorship. So in-venue signage, digital, social, obviously is part of that. As we've been looking at social specifically in the past 2 years, we've found a lot of interesting insights that we were surprised by that we'll share as we go through, but that's where my background comes from.
And I'm Rob Cressy, the founder of Crest Media. We specialize in digital marketing strategy and content creation. I'm also the founder of Bacon Sports, a sports comedy and men's lifestyle blog, where we really made our name in sports fan engagement and building community and understanding how to leverage social to turn awareness into action.
Awesome. What's just because I can't see the screen, let's get to our first question and let me know what it is because I can't see it.
What most important social channels right now?
Most important social channels right now. So this one's an interesting topic because we just recently had the IPO of Snapchat, which everyone knows, and I believe tomorrow after hours they're reporting their first earnings report. So that's going to be really fascinating. There's so much segmentation in the marketplace when we're talking about social. You've got Facebook, you've got Instagram, which is also owned by Facebook. You've got Twitter, LinkedIn, you've got Pinterest, Snapchat. Where is it most important to be? And where are you seeing ROI? And is it all about just getting actual dollars in and dollars out when you're talking about a brand that's advertising or even putting organic media on these platforms? And from my perspective, Facebook is still the #1 platform by far, regardless of industry, regardless of if you're B2B or B2C. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, Facebook has the biggest reach of any platform by far. They're now at 1.9 billion monthly active users. I mean, it's literally like a third of the planet that has internet has Facebook and uses it on a monthly basis. So that's incredible. They've done an incredible job with Instagram, which is part of Facebook. It's owned, but it operates as a separate app. They have basically stolen the things that were really great about Snapchat, and they've implemented that into Instagram Stories, which has already grown in just a handful of months to over 200 million daily or monthly active users. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but it's massive. So you get the reach. But to me, as a marketer, the #1 most important thing, because we do a lot of paid media, is the targetability and the data that Facebook has. Because it's unlike Snapchat, where it's kind of this private one-to-one conversation for the most part. Facebook has been collecting data on everyone on the platform in detail. The things you post, what you like, what you don't like, the comments that you leave, the pictures that you like, the places that you check into, the geotags on your images when you upload them. You go down the rabbit hole and start to really understand how much data Facebook has on everyone in this room. it's a really incredible. And from a marketing perspective, utilizing that to target is awesome. So for me, that's the number one platform is Facebook, which includes Instagram. And we can go into the details on the other, but I'm curious if you guys have any different thoughts on any of the platforms that exist.
So for me, what I love most about Facebook is the ability to build relationships. So when I think about social, I think 100% about engagement at all times. I know it's very easy to try and be overly self-promotional, but when you look at the biggest pitfalls of when brands fail to get organic engagement, it's because it is not a two-way conversation. It's all about them. So the number one way to get organic reach right now on Facebook is via video, but specifically live video. And the reason that works so well is because it's authentic. You can see exactly what the person is. You can interact back and forth with them. You can also ask questions. So the dialogue and engagement that I see on Facebook, when done correctly, far trumps anything else. So for me, specifically if you're doing video, it's Facebook. But then if you're asking questions, if you're just going to say, ask a question across the board on every different platform, if you do it correctly, Facebook is the one that most interests me.
And I think a lot of you are probably thinking Facebook, right? That was one of the first. And so you have to think about who you're targeting, right? We have a Gen Z consultant that works for us. She's 18. She just got a Facebook account because she had to, because she's going to Princeton and they have groups, and that's how you needed to find people. Otherwise, she did not want a Facebook account at all. And I think you'll find that a lot in that 13 to 18-year-old segment. And so then you really need to think about who are you targeting. If it's using Facebook as that platform, you should be reaching that 25 to 54 probably user. If you're looking at something more in the 13 to 18, it's probably where Snapchat comes in.
Snapchat. Yeah, it's going to be interesting as well to see what Snapchat does with as well. Last week they announced officially that they now have a self-serve ad platform, whereas before, if you were an advertiser, really the only way to do it was either through geo filters that anyone could buy, which is like as basic as you get as far as buying any advertisements are concerned. But the bigger stuff where you could have lenses and other like video roll ads was all for Fortune 500 companies. I mean, you were committing millions and millions of dollars in the long term, working one-to-one with a person over at Snapchat. Now they're launching their self-serve ad platform, kind of like what Facebook has. And so that's going to be interesting for me and us to see really how that plays out. Are they going to do a good enough job in allowing you to target those users? Because if you can get those people that are under 25 who are using that platform more than they're using Facebook or anything else, now there's a lot of value in the platform. But I think the challenge is going to be the lack of data that they have in comparison to a Facebook. What's our next one here?
What percentage of your marketing budget should be dedicated to social?
All of it. It depends on the size of your overall marketing budget, right? So if we're talking about, and I assume, well, how many people in this room would consider themselves or the company they work for a small to medium-sized business, like non-Fortune 500 publicly traded company? So almost everybody. So almost everyone in this room, I'm going to say that, really you should be looking at how to spend a very large percentage of your paid marketing budget on social. The different platforms are going to depend on what you're trying to accomplish, who you're trying to target, who your consumer is, what that mix looks like for you, because you don't necessarily just want to do one over the other. But if you're still spending, which I'm assuming a lot of you are, a lot of media on, or a lot of marketing budget on traditional stuff like magazine, TV, radio, print, et cetera, the ROI difference between that traditional media and social, let's say Facebook, it's night and day. It's like it doesn't even exist anymore. And so if you're a small to medium-sized business, to waste any money on the broader marketing on the broader platforms like traditional stuff is just a waste of money. You should start with the biggest ROI, and the most leverage you have is start there and work your way out. So I would start with Facebook, and then when you start to hit saturation there, you add other platforms, you add other stuff. And if you're a Fortune 500 company and you have enough budget to where literally you can buy every Facebook ad available today, well, of course, you're not going to just do Facebook. You might work your way out and continue to do traditional, but what I see is that it's still very legacy. So even the large Fortune 500 brands are still going the traditional first and thinking of Facebook and social media as this like secondary thing they have to do, when everyone needs to flip it on their head, regardless of size of business, say this is how you market today. The other more traditional stuff is the ancillary add-ons if you're big enough to be able to afford it.
So from an organic side, a different way to look at this is time. Time is money. So it really comes down to how much time are you willing to spend on social engaging your audience, because the paid is always going to be there. It's now a matter of, all right, you have no marketing budget, but that doesn't mean that you can't be successful at social. So now you have to say to yourself, how much time are we willing to allocate in order to be successful at social? And here's the thing, through marketing automation, you can be very good at social by planning something, let's call it 2 hours once a week on Mondays, or at the start of every month, you're sitting out there planning your entire editorial calendar. But you're going to get more out of it when you put more into it. So really the simplest way that I would say is figure out from a time standpoint how much time you want to allocate to social, and knowing that will allow you much better to accomplish your goals and back it out, because oftentimes social, it never ends. It is an ongoing conversation. It's also a long-term relationship thing. So just doing one tweet or post today isn't all of a sudden going to change your entire marketing plan. But it's the consistency of it and knowing that, all right, this is the plan that I'm going to follow, so that you're not always constantly saying, oh my gosh, should I be doing more and more and more? Just stick to it like you would anything else.
Yeah, and I think from a research perspective, I would never tell you how much of your budget you should be spending on social, but I can support the fact that you should be spending more, probably, than what you are. We value sponsorship, sports sponsorships across teams, leagues, so we've now up to $4 billion worth of transactions we valued. So we have all that information. So we start to do our own research against it. It's all blinded, so we're not sharing other people's information. But we measured specifically which channel is the most effective within the sponsorship realm. And so you've got those 7 or 8 channels, just like traditional that you talked about. We found that social media is the most effective and the most efficient. So it is the cheapest, and it's actually the most effective. It's hitting beyond just the brand awareness piece that probably most people consider it to be in a social media perspective down the funnel. It's actually going down further than other traditional channels might be. That's actually more brand perception.
And
There was
go
a
ahead.
question, actually.
Are you saying that from the perspective of B2C or B2B or both?
all of it.
So those sponsorships are both B2B and B2C.
It's all of it. And this is why, right here. Your phone, this is where everyone spends all of their time. People are not sitting reading physical newspapers, maybe in very small percentages.
I
but
do.
You do?
Yes, every Sunday.
She's the one.
I get the
So, but seriously, and I'm sure you can all agree that you spend more time on this device than you do anything else in your life, and that is consistent against every single age group regardless, right? And so this is the biggest differentiator in what we're seeing. So social is how we engage on our mobile device, on our phones, so therefore it is where people's eyeballs are at all times. And a great statistic that is kind of unbelievable is 1 out of every 5 minutes on mobile is spent on Facebook or Facebook property. 1 out of every 5 minutes. That's crazy. And when you think about how many hours a day people spend on their phones, that's a lot of time. What do we got?
Awareness or sales?
Awareness or sales? So this is my perspective. It's both. And you have to understand really what your goals are as a company, as a brand, or as a product. What are you trying to accomplish at the end of the day? Right? Because what I see with clients big and small is they're not actually very clear on that, regardless of how established they are. And so getting clear on what you're trying to accomplish through your marketing. Is it to sell a specific product? Is it to grow a list or a community? Is it both? What exactly are you trying to accomplish as a brand or as a company? Start there and then work backwards. Because here's the deal. You can run ads, let's say on Facebook or Instagram, regardless, and I've seen it across every single industry, that I want to sell this bottle of water, and I can optimize it to sell a bottle of water and get a positive ROI on Facebook. I can sell a bike. You can sell anything that you want if done correctly, targeted to the right groups, optimized properly with the right video, with the right content, with the right messaging, you can get a positive ROI just buying ads and selling your thing. The reality is you can only do that for so long. Think about, let's think about like a Nike, right? People don't buy Nike because they got an ad slammed in their face on Facebook or in a newspaper or something else. People buy Nike because they've spent the last 3 decades telling you how awesome Nike is and building that awareness of the brand and building that story and that feeling that Nike has. So when you recognize that, you as a company or brand, big or small, you have to be telling that story. You have to be building your brand simultaneously while selling. And I feel like a lot of the time, the feedback that I get is companies feel like it has to be either one or the other. We're either just creating brand awareness, we want beautiful videos, or we just need hard sales. And you can do one or the other, but if you just make brand awareness and you don't make sales, you're out of business. If you just do sales without creating a brand, eventually you're just a commodity and someone else will put you out of business. So for me, it's both, and it's recognizing how can you tell your story, but then taking people down that journey to then eventually sell them the thing that they need and that you have.
Yeah, as I mentioned at the top, it's about increasing awareness and turning that awareness into action. So you can just say sales is whatever your desired result is, and knowing that this is a long-term relationship that we're trying to build here, it's going to take some time for you to convert someone from just hearing about you for the first time until they're going to take that desired action. So it's very much short-term versus long-term, and a lot of people who say social doesn't work, it's like, well, how long have you been trying to engage your audience for? And it's not realistic to think that in a course of 1 week, all of a sudden everything's going to change. It's very much like, for example, Brian and I do a podcast together, and we
Called the Sports Marketing Huddle. You can find it on iTunes.
and
That was a sale.
It's a great example of, we started it last July. In the difference in your and I's relationship, we went from me having you on my podcast to us now being on this panel together. And it's a great example of the same cycle that social takes. Here's someone, he and I had never even met before, just via Twitter. It's like, boom, he followed me, I followed him back. He comes back on my podcast. Next thing you know, we're now doing a podcast together. So it's a sales cycle like that where you say, let's take a touch point where someone's now interested in you, and now let's nurture that bad boy, and eventually that action's gonna happen.
Yeah, and I think just to reiterate what I just spoke about earlier, social is proven to be most effective further down the purchase funnel, we believe. So awareness, yes, it works, but we think that more traditional marketing mix, so TV, all of that is actually more effective for awareness, and social media is actually more effective further down the purchase funnel.
Best performing content. I don't think anybody wants to hear this one though.
We'll move on to the next one. Just kidding. Video by far. I mean, you know that Snapchat is calling themselves a camera company. And now Facebook, in their earnings call last Wednesday, also called themselves a camera company in some not exactly same wording, but that's what Zuckerberg's called themselves. Because video is the way of communicating now, and it's the way of communicating in the future. Cisco, I was talking over at Sales Summit yesterday, and so I pulled up a slide that was from a piece of data from Cisco that said that by 2019, 80% of all the web consumption will be video. 80%. That's insane. We have seen year over year astronomical growth when it comes to video consumption, video sharing. And the reality is it's because, number one, we all have these devices in our pocket, so we can all watch video at any time on demand when we want to consume it on any channel, whether it's social or it's an app or it's a streaming website. You can all watch video immediately no matter where you are, assuming you have a cell connection, which is pretty much everywhere now. That's number one. And number two, it really tells a story. It gives a peek into people's lives. That's why Snapchat has been so successful, because they've created these 7 to 10 second little video snippets into people's real lives that aren't produced, that aren't too thought out, that aren't complex. It's just, hey, Rob did this today, right? And so that's what people want to consume. They want the realness of what is happening in other people's lives, whether it's celebrities, whether it's brands. They want to see the behind the scenes. You want to see what other people are doing, and that is what video allows us to do. That doesn't mean that polished, produced video doesn't work. Of course it does. But the reality is, video has become the medium in which we communicate back and forth. And another thing that I shared yesterday in Sales Summit was that in a B2B perspective, I use video to pitch prospective clients. So I'll take on my iPhone in 2 or 3 minutes, hey, so I've never met this person. This is why I want to connect with you. And guess what? Nobody ever sends people a video and email, but when I do, I get an immediate response. Because, you get to know me, you get my personality. In 60 seconds, you get to know something about me personally, and that's what people want. So video is the most powerful medium. It doesn't necessarily mean that the written word is meaningless. It doesn't mean that images aren't. But we've also seen from a paid media perspective that video outperforms all of the other types of content by far.
So the interesting thing about video, and I agree with what you say, Brian, people will thank you after watching a video, which isn't something that you typically get just from a picture or an article. And that's a very powerful thing when you're delivering a ton of value and all of a sudden they say thank you. You don't realize the impact that had on me, irregardless of the subject. So Brian and Heather, one thing that I think is interesting is, so everybody knows that video gets more organic, everybody's consuming it, it's the place to be. So what is stopping everyone from now creating that video? And my tips would be, if you guys are already creating blog articles, just turn those blog articles into video. And then you're like, well, who in the world is going to create the video for us? And this goes back to what I said at the very beginning about fear. You guys have to get comfortable being in front of the camera, and that's just going to start with one time. And it may not be you, it has to be somebody else in your organization. But you do not need a trained media professional to have to create your videos for you. Because one of the beautiful things about video, Snapchat, Instagram Live, or video in general, is the authenticity about it. You see it and you can immediately make a connection with that person. And we're not expecting everything to be Hollywood level quality. Sometimes the exact opposite is what works. You can just, boom, pop this bad boy on right now and give a piece of thought leadership or a little nugget, because that's what the audience loves to see from you. So I challenge everyone out there, one, create one video on your own. And I don't care if only one person sees it. It will drastically change the way that you perceive video creation.
I actually have a question for you guys. So obviously, I think we all agree that video is probably the most effective. Can we talk about length of time? Because isn't that, oh, did I get a murmur? Yes.
If you're doing a video with your iPhone, is it best to do it vertical or horizontal?
Okay, so 2 questions here. Let's start, well, vertical or horizontal? Do it native to the platform. So if you're on Snapchat, it's vertical. If you're on Twitter, you can do vertical, but I believe it cuts off the top and the bottom, so you probably want it horizontal. Facebook, you can do either. It'll stretch the screen, so vertical works very well there now. If it's YouTube, definitely horizontal. And I know that, now I got to do it twice. Yep, or you need to crop it properly or shoot it properly. But the reality is, you can share it one way or the other across all the platforms. But when you do it natively, correctly to the platform, it definitely performs better. And so back to what you were saying is length of video. That's a tough one because, everyone has this whole shorter is better thing. And while there is some truth to that, the reason that shorter is better is because most people try to do something like a Facebook Live or make some video and they talk for 19 minutes about something that no one gives a crap about, right? It's a lot harder to be concise in a minute and a half than it is in 20. And so the value and the quality of that video typically goes down. But if your quality and the value that you're delivering to your audience is super high, the length doesn't matter. It's all about the quality of the content, and it's all about the value that you're giving back to whoever your audience is that matters. If it's incredible, they'll watch for 15 minutes. But if it's bad and it's 30 seconds, they won't watch for 3. And so I think that's the biggest thing where if you look at the data, it's so skewed because that it has to be short. I did a 2-hour webinar a couple weeks ago. It was only supposed to be an hour and change. I ended up going on for 2 hours. I had a 93% retention rate because the content and the quality was good. I'm not patting myself on the back, But I was surprised to see that the retention rate was so high. Had I been giving away garbage advice, nobody would have stuck around. And so to get somebody's attention for 2 hours is incredible, but it just goes to show you that it's all about quality.
So one thing that I will add to that, so I like to err on the shorter side for what Brian said, but also because you as a creator, so the amount of time it's going to take you. So I had a client, I was hosting a daily fantasy sports live streaming show 5 days a week, and they're like, we want a 45-minute show every single day. So we had to prepare for 2 hours ahead of time, 45-minute show. Then we looked at the analytics behind it, and the average viewer was only there for 18 minutes. So when thinking about the entire life cycle of that video, had we shortened it to 18 minutes, not only would we have been more productive, but we could have probably got all of the value that we wanted to in that time frame there. So I would think about yourself in that. The longer you're going to make the video, the longer it's going to take you to create. And then the shorter you make it, the more you're going to have to think about creating the value right out of the gate because of our short attention span. And I would certainly, when starting off, start short. Get used to doing little nuggets where you say, boom, powerful punch.
How many of you here use video on a consistent basis for your marketing, whether personal brand or company brand? Like 10, 15%. Everyone who did not raise their hand, you're behind the ball. You have to be doing video. And what I liked what Rob just said about doing it short is, here's the deal. You're afraid to make video because you're afraid that, well, you're putting yourself out there or someone at your company out there or your personal brand out there and you might get a negative reaction. The reality is you're never going to know what your fans, what your audience wants until you do it. You're better off doing one video a day, every single day that's 60 seconds and finding that no one cares about the first 25 videos that you do, but then you find the one where, oh, all of a sudden people start caring. Now you know to do more of that and less of everything else. So it's a live learning experiment, which is different than any other time in marketing history.
And I think it's the volume. Lastly, the volume is the important thing. So if it's longer, you're not going to be able to produce 10 45-minute episodes. But if you're saying, boom, 1 minute every single day, once again, we talked about speed, how important that is. The more videos you're going to be pumping out, the better chances of success.
And the consistency, right? People will then expect that. The only piece I wanted to hit on quickly was the authentic piece, because I think we heard that from both of you, and I think that probably really resonates for us to back that up. We worked with the NFL on their social media strategy to better help them understand what was most effective and how they should start pushing content. And the interesting part that came out of that was, obviously the NFL handle as a league maybe is not as interesting to people, and they're probably not pushing out the content people are most looking for on social, especially on game day. I think what we assumed was that it was the player content and the information coming from the player feeds themselves. It was actually the team. So it was the 32 league teams where people were actually asking for more content. We surveyed fans that said, I'm an NFL fan, and we said, what kind of content are you looking for? And it was coming from the teams that was more likely. So a little bit of an interesting note, but it was the point that we wanted to make was that local versus national and that authentic piece.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually surprised at that data point. That's cool.
Exactly.
All right, what are the biggest mistakes on social?
Fire. Not doing enough of it, right? So, if you look at it, and I know, thank you, we've got 10 minutes left, guys. So, I know I think there's some logos up on there. I can't see the screen. I know that there was the Pepsi thing a few weeks ago. You had fire was more or less a social issue than it was really just a,
Event crisis.
Event shit show, sorry. Let's be honest here. Here's the thing, because for me, it's not doing enough of it frequently and consistently enough. Whereas I would rather see a brand like Pepsi put out something where, yeah, maybe in hindsight you look at that and you're like, that was pretty bad creative, that was a bad idea. I would rather see a brand or a person or a company do that all the time and go, well, that didn't work, on to the next. Well, that didn't work, on to the next. Volume and speed is so important today. Time, attention spans are so tiny. And honestly, I think Pepsi probably ended up selling more product over the following 4 weeks than they would have had that commercial been a hit, right? So for me, the biggest mistake is not doing it consistently.
Interesting.
Yeah, they got so much press out of it. It's incredible. No PR is bad PR, let's be honest. What do you guys say?
Not asking questions. If you were to change your social media to only questions, I know that's a little bit extreme, but if you were to only ask questions, what do you think would happen to your engagement versus if you are only posting links and articles? Because here's the thing, you have to give people an opportunity to respond back to you. So one of the biggest things that brands fail at is they think that just because you post, you do social media correctly. You can look at just so many brand pages. Every single day, there's one post, and you look, no likes, no shares, no comments. No, social media just doesn't work for us. It's like, wait, what? It's social media's fault that everything is about you and not this conversation. And you're gonna hear the same things over and over and over again from us. It's about providing value and creating this conversation. And I'm not gonna recommend 100% of your content is questions oriented, but the more of it that is, even if you want to take that same article that you would promote, ask a question about something you talk about in that article so that you can keep the conversation going. And then lastly, authenticity. And we did a podcast about this where there will be brands who search Twitter and try and find something that you're talking about and chime in there, but unfortunately they do it like a robot. They don't do it like somebody who is authentically talking to you. So consumers can see right through that lack of authenticity. And I really liked in the last presentation about how Bing was sending memes to people who responded back to them. That's what you need to do. Have a heartbeat as if your friend was on the other line there and you're like, boom, I want to show you something awesome.
Yeah, I agree with both points. Follow through, I think, is really important. Again, that Microsoft presentation was fantastic. And I think having that conversation with consumers and then continuing the conversation, again, as it kind of fits back into the research on being more likely to get down the purchase funnel, you have to stay with those people. And so coming in and out isn't going to work. It's going to continue to follow them through the customer experience.
Exactly. What can you do on social that gives value to your audience? Right? So if it's a sports brand, are you engaging with the players? Are you giving them access that they wouldn't normally get? Are you giving them tips on how to improve? Are you, whatever brand you're, your CPG brand, you're telling them like how to drink and hydrate through the day? What is the value that you're giving based on your brand and who your audience is? Don't make it about yourself first. We'll do questions in a second. I think we got one more. Do we have one more slide, or is there?
We do. Top social tips.
Start on this first, Rob. Let's reverse this. You guys go first.
So, top social tips. So, aside from engaging and asking questions, it is the mix at which you're going to do this. So we talked about how video is great, but I really like to see a mix of everything on every single platform. So for me, if your consumer is on a platform, I want to be there. I know people have talked about, all right, you can't be everywhere. Well, that's a lie, because if I can be everywhere, you can be everywhere. Once again, it's a matter of having a strategy and a game plan, executing on that, knowing what your KPIs are, how are you going to take the awareness, increase it, and turn it into action. Because every time you post something on social, it's an opportunity to create a positive brand interaction. It's no different than right now, my customer being right here in this audience and you having that ability to talk to them. So why would you ever have a post that sucks? Because I would never in person do something that is not good in front of you. So the same standard needs to apply for every single thing that you do. And a lot of companies can get in trouble with that because of the volume. Oh, let's just keep pumping stuff out. I'll just throw an article out there. No, think of each thing. Nick Saban, the coach of Alabama, says, I'm addicted to the process. It's not about winning, it's the process. Every single social media post that you have, treat it as if your number one customer that you want to hit is reading that.
What about you, Heather?
I was just going to say personalization, I think, is the most important. Again, as we talk about, like I said, we have a Gen Z consultant, she's 18, and she tells us every day that brands are coming at them constantly, but no one is speaking to them correctly. And the reason is that they feel they're really special, right? And so they need to be talked to in a certain way. And so you really need to make sure you're personalizing that message so it's not just being thrown off as brand speak, because more and more consumers actually feel that and see that. I'm sure you all feel the same way, that you're like, please stop talking to me like that. Talk to me like I'm a human being, and they'll respond.
If you want to see a really great example of a corporate brand, a huge corporate brand that does it well, look at Wendy's. They talk like they're just a human person because there is on the other side of Twitter or Facebook, and they get, they have fun with people. They'll poke fun at themselves. They have a lot of fun. Look at Wendy's as a really great case study. I have 4 tips. Number 1, my friend Hank Norman, who I work with, who has actually worked with The View and Barbara Walters. He's a media trainer, media coach. He has a company, 2 Market Media. He has a hashtag called posted not perfect. Just do it. Put your stuff out there on social because you're afraid to do it because of the reaction you might get. Posted not perfect. Do it. Listen to what Hank Norman says is the biggest thing that I've seen change myself and my company's brands. Number 2, consistency. You have to be consistent. If you do it 2 days in a row and then you don't do it for 5 or 6, 2 things happen. Number 1, people think you're a flake just like you would be in real life. Number 2, the algorithms on most of these platforms realize that you're also flaky and therefore will treat you as such. Number 3, give value 80% of the time, right? So what does ever your audience need to learn, need to know, be entertained by? Give them value. Don't make it about you. Make it about your audience 80% of the time. The other 20%, yeah, you can talk about yourself. You need to sell stuff, right? You can do that, but use the 80-20 rule as a ballpark gauge. And number 4, use paid media to get reach, because the reality is if you were posting organically on Facebook 5 or 6 years ago, 60, 70% of your audience might see it. Now, 2%. And if your content's really good, 4 or 5% at max. You're leaving out 95% of your audience. And every platform has an algorithm now except for Snapchat, which will happen. And so you need to use paid media on the posts and the content that does really well so you get that scale and you get that reach. Otherwise, you're only hitting a very small fraction of people.
I got a quick question. By a show of hands, how many of you through this conference have posted something on Instagram Live or Snapchat since you've been here? All right, so the number of hands that goes up should be everybody, because this is your opportunity, even on a personal level. You guys represent brands. So for me, being the MC of this, the entire time on Instagram Live, I'm giving behind the scenes. I'm saying what's about to happen. You guys need to take advantage of that opportunity, and that can be your first foray into video. And I don't care if you're the CEO or if you're an entry-level employee. Just start doing it. Start building your brand every single time, because this is a great opportunity for you guys. And if you're not doing it, everybody who else is going to far surpass you.
All right, we got a couple of minutes. Do you have some questions, quick questions? Hi. I'll go to you now. Yeah. And then behind you there.
Okay, so this has to do with
Hold it up.
Facebook
No,
advertising.
like talking to. There you go.
Facebook advertising.
I know it looks
So I've done everything in terms of Facebook I see on paper. It makes complete sense. It's cheap. I can get a lot of clicks. I've done everything, whether trying to promote seminars or webinars or just even opt-in bribes. I've done everything. I've hired consultants. I've built beautiful landing pages, and I get the people clicking. I get people clicking cheap. I'm getting the traffic, but I find that there's no follow-through. I can't get people signing up for stuff.
Right. So that's one of 2 problems. It's either an audience problem. You're targeting people who are super likely to click, but have actually not much interest in what you're offering. Or once they're clicking and they're either getting to your website or your lead ad or whatever it is, your value or your explanation of your value is not clear enough. So they saw your ad and they said, oh, this is interesting. They got there and is either unclear or they didn't necessarily jive with whatever it is that you're giving away. It's one of those 2 things for sure.
Your content's not good enough. If you're driving all of that, I love creating content, and if your content is good enough, it will convert. So that's the number 1 thing that I would say is just figure out how to create better content and test different ways of creating content.
All right, the woman in the red shirt back there.
Shout out to Ashley. She was engaging on Twitter yesterday. She was my MVP
These little
of
box
day 1.
things are gonna break stuff.
So my question is about video on Facebook. When you're talking about making 1-minute short videos on Facebook, connecting with people authentically, one of the things that we talk about at work is that most people are consuming Facebook videos with the sound off. So what are your thoughts on how you should be optimizing video for social?
Absolutely. Number one, you need to have closed captions on everything on Facebook and any platforms that allow it. YouTube, I will watch probably 50% of the videos I watch on mute as well. So closed captions, number one. Number two, if you have the time, energy, or money to add graphics, look at Insider Video and even Tasty and all of those where they have the little graphic that tells you the whole story the whole way through. They outperform videos that are just video by far.
I have a different take on that. I don't want the overproduction to hurt the consistency and volume at which you're going to create content. So while I agree that the high quality production is certainly going to deliver more value from an optimization standpoint, if you're at this conference right now and you're like, well, I don't have the ability to do closed captioning on my Facebook Live video, don't let that stop you. So I would say it needs to be a combination of both of those, your high quality ones that you're going to do captions, and the ones you say, you know what, I just got to create something. There'll be 50% of the people who aren't going to listen to it, but I'm more importantly interested about the ones who do.
I'll give you a quick hack. Number one, if your video is under, I think, 30 or 60 seconds, Facebook will allow you to auto-generate captions, and then you can just fix the captions because they're always a little bit off. If it's longer than that, they won't give the option to auto-caption. Spend like $5 on promoting the video, and now it's an ad, and Facebook will allow you any ad length to have free captions. Then you go in there under the ad, you add the free captions, and it'll show on your organic content. So that's a quick way to do it for a $5 caption, closed caption. Question?
My name's Catherine. I'm with 360. Palpable Media. We're a 360 content agency. So thank you very much for emphasizing the importance of video. I'd like for you to talk about the importance of, you talked about behind the scenes and really thinking out of the box, because the frustration we have as advisors is thinking, okay, you are a big hotel, let's go back and maybe focus on your kitchen and doing something authentic about that and focusing on that story. Or you're a big bank, let's talk about the guys in the back room and making you more human. So can you talk about thinking outside the box and not just pitching more corporate ideas onto the world?
Go with what's real. I think for me, and I'm sure you see this all the time with those types of clients, which are typically a bit more conservative, have probably been around for a little bit longer. The older way of telling stories has always been to manufacture it. Let's find some actors, let's tell this beautiful story, let's overproduce it. And so that's very much ingrained in that older corporate culture. And so what you need to convince them of, and it's hard, I deal with this all the time, you need to convince them that it's the real small stuff that actually matters. I want to know the reason, if there was a cool reason that bank was started 150 years ago by somebody who had some grand vision, tell me that story. If there's someone in the mailroom who, it changed their life and they've worked their way up to something and they're super passionate about it, tell me that story. It's the human connections and the real stories that people want to see. You don't care about a bank telling you that you're going to get a 0.001 extra % interest rate. No one gives a damn. But the reality is, if you're showing me that the bank really cares, it has good culture and good people, I'm going to be substantially more inclined to actually do business there. That help?
The other thing to add on that is there are corporate brands who I think are doing a good job. Maybe look at the Wendy's or other people like that. Show them the numbers. Selfishly, from the research perspective, they do perform better. And so someone, especially in a C-level exec type situation, wants to be able to see proof and numbers and whatnot. Show them that it works.
Absolutely. Over here. Nice catch. All right. What do you got?
All right, video question. So currently,
We're over.
Facebook and YouTube, they're in competition for with video use, and YouTube video on Facebook does not show as beautifully.
Right.
And so I'm doing both. That's really the only option I have. Facebook being good social media, YouTube number 2 search engine, but number 1 suggestions.
Do both. You got to do both. I did a video this morning, about a 60 or 90 second, actually I think it was a 2-minute little video about some marketing stuff. I uploaded it to Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, right? And I get the most engagement, and Insta. I get the most engagement on Insta and Facebook. But for me, I don't care that I'm not promoting my YouTube page directly, but I put it up there for the exact reason that you just said. It's a search engine. So if I have something interesting to say that one person connects with and they happen to search for it, and then they're like, I like what this guy has to say. Let me see what he does. They see my company. That's all I'm looking for. And so the extra energy and effort that it takes to be on all those platforms is so minimal. You have to do it because there's no way for me or anyone else to predict which one's going to end up winning or if they're going to both be around in 5 or 10 years or something else is going to come. So in the meantime, while they kind of split this market share and there's a bit of a differential on how they're being used, do both. It doesn't take that much extra time and it's worth being in every place you can be.
I think there's an interesting designation for video. I completely support you posting Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, but all your other content, and this is one thing for things that brands fail at, do not post the same content on every single platform at the same time. One thing that drives me absolutely nuts, what is the incentive for me to follow you on Instagram or Twitter if you're producing the same content on Facebook? Goes back to you have that opportunity to speak to your number one target customer every single time. And instead of saying, I'm going to natively create content for each platform, you're saying, I'm going to take the lazy way out and I'm just going to blast this everywhere because everyone knows they're not going to see everything all the time. Do not take that mindset. Create content specifically to each platform, though video is a little bit more unique where you can't spread it elsewhere, but do that to yourself. Make sure you create unique content on each platform.
Cool. Larry, last question, then I know we're a little over, so we'll wrap this up after this last question.
So we through sponsorship, we have custom primary research studies. So we find fans who are aware of partnerships, and we start to drill down from there. How did you find that you were aware of this sponsorship with this team? And then are you more likely to buy this product? And so it kind of drills down from a questionnaire perspective. We measure that against the CPMs that they're selling their social media at. So when you aggregate all of that information across a variety of sponsorships, we're able to create this like nerdy chart to show that it's actually the most effective while also being the most efficient.
Cool. Thank you.